All right, welcome back to That Doesn't Suck. I'm starting a video and we're going to do it all overhead. So this is video for doing a yeast starter experiment. What I want to see is if one can be started the same way from fresh milled flour and from commercially available flour. Now I bought just a bag of flour off the shelves at Walmart, and it's a White Lilly flour, and so I'm using it to do the yeast. And if it's successful, I'm going to make a loaf of bread from the yeast, and so I'm doing it from there, and I'm also doing it from fresh milled flour. So we're going to go through and I'm going to show you the stages all. It usually takes about 14 days for the yeast to grow. The last time I did it for 18, almost 21, I think. And then, but anyway, I started it and I fed them, and I'll go through and show you all the steps. But I started by mixing water and flour and letting it sit, and you don't seal it. You leave it you don't leave it open either, but you don't put the seal side down on the jar. You just cover it so nothing can fall in it, or no bees or anything or whatever animal critters will get in there. So but anyway, so we're going to go through the 14 days. We're going to compare the yeast growth between fresh milled flour and commercially available flour. So we'll see how that goes and see if that's interesting or not, and maybe we'll do something more with it in the future if it does work out, or if we see something interesting or something I can't confirm. All right, well, thanks for watching and follow along. All right, well, you just saw my introduction video to this, and I don't know what I did, but I lost the start of this video when I was doing it. So my first video of the yeast is showing day 2. I don't know what happened to day 1 where I mixed it up, so I'm just going to explain what I did because you'll get the gist of what's going on. But to start it, all I did was take and mix up the fresh milled in a separate jar and the commercially available in a separate jar, and started them off. And it started off simply with 50 grams of water and 50 grams of flour for each one. And then you mix that up and you leave it in the jar. And you leave it it wasn't until day 3 where I actually did anything to it. And so you'll see that in the video. So why I missed it, I don't know. I'm sorry about that, but onwards and upwards, we'll just keep going. But at least you'll know how I started it. Okay, just a view for day 2. We're not doing anything to them, so they're just sitting. They're going to sit for another 24 hours, and tomorrow morning we will feed them, which will take 50 grams of each of these, 50 grams of flour for each, and 50 grams of water, and then we'll see where they go. But you can see there's some funky stuff happening in there. It doesn't really look like there's a lot there. You can see some moisture condensation. It's smoothed out. We'll see what happens. And so I did name, well, sort of. I did that one because he's fresh milled. That one because it's White Lilly flour. So we'll see how it goes. All right, so this is day 3. You can see how Bob looks. He looks good as always. Because if you look at the feeding, you can see where I fed him yesterday, and he rose up to this point, and then now he's back down, so he's ready to be fed again. So we're going to feed him after we're done with these 2. So this is after, you can see he's got a lot of black going on there, a lot of activity, some liquid in there. So we're just going to scoop him out because all that's good, and that's just because it's going to take a while. That's yeast and lactobacillus and other types of bacteria working on him. This one, it doesn't look like there's a lot going on, but there is some bubbles, so we'll see what happens. So Bob Bob Jr., the fresh one, looks like it's doing more, and Lily looks like it might be doing something, so we'll see what happens. But they're going to take some time to fight things out. So I'm going to feed him this morning, and then from here on out, we're going to feed him every morning because I haven't done anything with him in 2 days. Now, if you need to, with fresh milled flour, you're supposed to that I don't recommend you leave a lot of it around. But if you want to, you can mill a bunch of flour ahead of time and just store it in a Ziploc bag or an airtight container and put it in the freezer, and that will keep it fresh. And that's fine for feeding the yeast starter, because you're not eating that as it goes, and you can mill fresh milled flour. You can do something fresh when you're feeding them for getting ready for to bake some bread or do something extra. So anyway, let's get to feeding him. So I'm going to set up for that. We'll be back in a minute. Okay, here we go. So we've got our fresh jars, 2 clean ones, and we have, so now we're going to measure out our flour. We want 50 grams. Okay, and that's good for Bob. And then we're going to take the other jar and we're going to get 50 grams. Yep, that's got a interesting smell to it. So we're doing Bob first, or we're doing the fresh one first. All right. There's 50 grams. Now we're going to add 50 grams of water. And the water can be cool, hot, whatever. Just not too hot. You don't want it any. If you feel it hot on your finger, it's probably too hot. You want it to feel like there's nothing. Or it can be a little on the cool side. That's fine. That's good. 101. So it's 51 grams of water. Gram or 2 here or there, doesn't matter. So we're going to give that a stir. Now we're going to add our flour to it. And this is the same way you would feed your yeast. And like I said, I've been doing this a 1:1 ratio. Some people recommend, and it's probably valid when you get to feeding them regular, but you want plenty of in there for them to build up, because we haven't really got our yeast established. But after you have it built up, you can split it out and just do like 10 grams of yeast starter to 50 grams of water to 50 grams of flour. And that actually should work well, and it will keep your yeast from overpowering. But with the fresh milled flour, I haven't heard a problem. Usually I think that problem is with, because I think fresh milled flour is hardier, and it gives more complex things for the yeast to eat. So, and I think the regular flour doesn't. That's just my theory. I don't know if that's right. All right, so I'm gonna put the cover on. And remember, we've got it with the seal up so that it doesn't seal completely. And then we're going to put this rubber band on to mark where he is, to see if we have any growth, because that'll give us an idea of what we're doing. All right, now we're going to do the other one, Lily. So I've got a fresh spoon, fresh bowl. I'm using the same bowl that I measured the flour in, but I'm just going to start with measuring out. That's pretty gelatinous. That's kind of funky. So we're going to get 50 grams of this out. There is a funky smell in there. So we'll see how this goes. My big concern is I just want to see, I know you should be able to do it and use the fresh milk or the regular flour as a growth medium. All right, so we got 51 grams, that's fine. And we're going to add our water. All right. So again, we're a gram over. I was aiming for 52 or 102 because I went 51 grams. So I was just trying to keep it even. But like I said, a gram here or there really isn't that end of the world. All right. We'll set that aside. Well, if I do need it, I've got to add the flour. I need a fresh spoon. I forgot to grab one. So don't want a wet spoon in the flour. So we're going to go Raymond for 154. The nice thing about it is if you overshoot doing it in a dry bowl, it's easier to take it out in the wet like this. It's not so easy. There we go. All right, we'll give that a stir. And I'm making sure I use a fresh spoon for each one because I don't want to cross-contaminate as much as possible. So I'm trying to use fresh everything. Or clean everything. All right. Just want to stir this until... I'm not going to show you this every morning because it's the same procedure every day. So we're just going to clock where they are before I mix them up. And then I'll probably do a video afterwards just to see where we are. So you can see the before and afters so we can clock this daily. But the procedure is the same for this. And like I said, this is the same procedure I use for feeding my yeast. And then I clean this out. Don't rinse this down your sink drain the way it is. You want to really get most of that out and break it up because you don't want a ton in there. All right, put the lid back on. A rubber band. It's a little bit higher. All right. Now we'll wait till tomorrow and recheck them. All right, look at what we've got. This is day 4. And both of them have risen pretty well. You can see where the rubber band was. They've doubled in size. They haven't quite reached where Bob was. Bob had gotten up to about somewhere in here. But you can see the texture difference is the bubbles, and they're much finer than the fresh milled. So they're both doing well. I'm surprised at how well both of them are doing. And but it's going to change, and things are still going to evolve because that's not fully singly a sourdough starter yet. We've got to let it continue and let the good yeast come through. All right, on to day 5. Okay, we're in the morning of day 5. We've got the fresh one and Lily. You can see where I put the rubber bands yesterday. It was kind of a lumpy thing. I didn't quite get it smoothed out, but I got the band kind of following it. You can see there seems to be more stuff going on. It didn't rise as much as yesterday. You can see there's more stuff, more air bubbles and things like that, or CO2 bubbles, they probably are. And there's finer stuff in the white, but they haven't, they're not as big as they were yesterday. So what you're seeing is the yeast are fighting, and they're fighting each other to become more dominant. You can see there's more of the black type stuff on top. Anyway, so this is what's going to happen, because we'll get a couple days where it doesn't even look like they'll do anything. And then they'll start going. That's why it takes 2 weeks for this thing to do what it's going to do, and before the yeast is strong enough for you to build it up and make a loaf of bread. So anyway, we'll do that, and then we'll get rolling. All right, so I'm going to feed them, and we'll see you tomorrow. Okay, day 6. See, it's got some funky air bubbles in it. That one we've got, looks like there's some air bubblage going on, some expansion. It's not nearly as much as it was the day before. You can see there's still a little bit of a dark gray or black stuff going on, and that's just off-gassing from the bad yeast in there. So like I said, they're fighting it out. They're not expanding as much, but we'll see who wins. It takes a while. All right, time to feed. All right, there we are, started day 7. It's pretty much the same. Now we'll take care of it and go to day 8. Okay, here we are, start of day 8. So you see we've got the growth, the same growth's been going on, so the yeast is still working through trying to populate. And you know what we're waiting for is this to start doubling in size. So you can see where the things are, they're still growing, and it does have a funky smell. So we'll see how this goes, and we're still waiting. It just takes a couple weeks. All right, day 9, we're starting here, and so we're about to feed them. You can see they're still doing the same thing, so they're still working. What we're waiting for is for it to be able to double. You can see the air bubbles in the store-bought flour, and you can see the air bubbles in the side, but not on the top like that. And you can definitely see the difference in the two, because the it definitely shows how much more drier and stiffer, because it takes more water to hydrate the fresh milled flour, and that makes it runnier, the same amount of water, because I'm still using a 50-50-50. 50 grams of flour, 50 grams of water, and 50 grams of starter. 50 grams of starter, flour, and water, all the same. And you can see the water is much different on the yeast in the two, on the flour in the two. All right, check in tomorrow. All right, here we are, day 10. You can see it's still not growing much on Lilly, the commercially available bread flour, but the fresh milled flour is doing pretty well. So you can see that has doubled in size. So we'll see how that goes. Day 10, so it's supposed to take about 2 weeks, so we'll see how this goes. My last one I let go 3 weeks before I baked anything, just to make sure, feeding it every day. All right, time to feed him again. All right, day 11. You can see got Lilly and the fresh, and that one is doing really well, the fresh milled flour. The other one just doesn't seem to be doing as much, but you can still see there's air bubbles in there. So we'll let this go and see what happens. Okay, we're at day 12. You can see the fresh milled is there in the middle. That's the new one. And the commercial flour is on the left. You can see there is activity. It has risen. It's above the rubber band. That one is doubled in size. That one's doing phenomenal. And that's the same, that's my old one, Bob, that I've been using forever. And that's this, they're all the same ratio, 50 grams of starter, 50 grams of flour, and 50 grams of water. And that one is going great guns, so it might be ready by day 14. So we'll see. Then I'll bake a loaf of bread with it and see how that goes. That one I might let go another week to see how it goes, and keep feeding it day to day. Anyway, time to feed, so day 12. Okay, here we are again. Once again, I'm just not seeing a lot of activity. So I'm kind of curious as to what's going on with the flour. I mean, you can see there's some activity, because inside there is air or CO2 bubbles coming out. So I'm probably going to let this go. I might kick it up a notch though. I don't know, it does have a smell to it. I don't know, I'm kind of reserving maybe taking some of the other starter, just mixing it in there to see what we can do, because I still would like to do a loaf with that to see what it is. But you can see, if you look closely, that's the line kind of there, how far it rose. And that's the line there, how far that's going. And they're both the same level, so that starter is looking really good. I'm probably gonna, this weekend, start with it. This is day 13, so tomorrow is day 14. So either tomorrow or the day after, I'll be baking some bread with that to see how it goes. See if it has a different flavor, since I did it at a little bit different time of year than the other one. All right, time to feed. Okay, it's day 14, and you can see with, that's Bob, and that's the fresh milled flour. I think I'm gonna call that Haley, after the Haley-Bob comet. That's one of those things, if you know, you know, crazy people. But the fresh milled flour, Lily, that thing, really, I'm gonna have to do a cleaner one for the next one so you can see it easier. But it's just not doing anything. I think I might upgrade it next. But anyway, later today I'm gonna feed it now, and then later tonight before I go to bed, we're gonna feed him again and up his thing, and I'll show you how I do that to prep him for baking some bread tomorrow. All right, time to feed. We'll check in later. Okay, we're basically gonna sum this video up here. This is day 15. So this has grown for 14 days. You can see this is the fresh, the one I started, and that's Bob. They're both at the same height. They were fed yesterday at the same time. They're doing well. So in the next video, I'm gonna feed Bob, and we're going to, and I'll show you how we do that to get him ready for a loaf of bread, and we're gonna bake our first bread with him. Lily, the one made from the commercial flour, has done nothing. So I think that shows either this time of year is not as good. I might try this experiment again with just doing commercial flour in the spring, see if there's more yeast in the air. But just to confirm what I'm doing, I'm gonna do a different mix and add some of the fresh milled flour to it, and then just continually feed it with regular flour and see how that goes, if that does produce a yeast starter. All right, well, as you can see, definitely, I think we're gonna do that to confirm, but I definitely think that the yeast it got to start making a sourdough was on the skin of the wheat berries before you grind them, and they get mixed in. So I think if you do that with fresh milled flour, you will get a starter, just because there's some yeast on it. Whereas the commercial flour is pretty much sterilized. And I just don't think there was enough in the air in the spring, because the house is closed up this winter. And I think in the spring there might be more air and more natural yeast getting in. So we'll try this again, because I actually want to see if I can make a more flavorful starter at a different time of year. So we'll check back in with that later. Thanks for watching. That doesn't suck.